I was Vice President of Human Resources at Microsoft at the turn of the millennium. Microsoft was at the peak of its dominance, at least in mind share. The company was fresh off a drawn-out battle with the Justice Department over allegedly having a monopoly in the personal computer world. It seemed a great juggernaut in the tech world, the company everyone feared to compete against. Ah, the good old days. The stock price, too, seemed inexorably on the rise. This minted a horde of senior people with what was called, in good company, walking away money. They had worked incredibly hard for years building the company. There was a joke at the time, "We have flex time at Microsoft, you can get your 80 hours in any way you like." It was said mostly with a wince, as it hit a bit too close to home. At the same time, the outside world was awash in the dot-com bubble. Fledgling internet companies like Pets.com were being valued like Fortune 500 companies. That alternative universe caused tremors inside Microsoft. Was the Windows First strategy the right choice? Should the company more aggressively embrace the internet? And of course, could the stock price continue to rise? This confluence of events caused a serious brain drain in the top ranks of the company. When money is not a factor, you work because you want to, because you believe in the vision. If that's not there, many choose to not be either. Brad Silverberg was first among those who weren't sure the company vision was right, and he told pretty much everyone who would listen about it, including me. And that's what this is all about. This is Leading Smart, the show about managing in the brainpower age. It's a field guide to the joys and challenges of leading and working in the modern workplace. I'm Chris Williams, your guide to the stories and ideas that I hope will inspire you to be a better leader in the world of knowledge work. This is the third and last of 3 episodes with Brad Silverberg. In this episode, we talk leadership as a VC and in a post-COVID world. This is episode 205, part 3 of my conversation with Brad Silverberg. In the previous episode, I told of the last meeting that Brad Silverberg and I had at Microsoft. He was returning from sabbatical and made the fateful choice to leave the company. It was hard for Brad and hard for me to hear.
So what happened was I took a sabbatical in summer of 1997. So till then, I had led Windows 95 effort up through that into 95. And moved the Windows group, consolidated the OS groups into one. And then I was leading the internet effort. We had a division that initially called the Internet Platform and Tools Division. So I had much of the internet stuff, included the browser and some of the server components and dev tools. And then that lasted for about a year and a half. And then it felt a little threatening to the Windows group. So to talk about an internet platform, well, no, Windows is our platform. So then I was in charge of Office and dev tools for about a year. And my heart just wasn't in it the same way. So I took a sabbatical, summer 97. I was going to come back beginning of 98 and worked on an agreement with Bill to run the Internet Explorer group and MSN. And then came back and that agreement was reneged. That they said, I came back my first day and they said, you know what? those 3 months worth of negotiation to come to agreement about what you do, we changed our minds. That didn't work for me because, like I said, trust is so important, and trust is a two-way street. And you want to be able to work for people that you come to work feeling like, hey, they trust me. I don't need to worry about what's going to happen, what decisions are going to happen about my future that happen behind my back that I'm not involved in. You're not going to get people's best work. People are coming into work every day wondering, how they might get, how stuff might be happening to them that wasn't agreed upon. So trust is a really big thing with me. I felt I developed that relationship trust with a group of folks I'd worked with, and I wanted to have that same trust in people I worked for. And once that trust was broken, I didn't think I was going to get back. It was a pretty deep wound for me. And so I ended up working for Bill and Steve as a consultant for the next couple of years, helping them understand, here are the changes coming to this world. Here are some of the things inside the company, organizationally, we need to address culturally. And I found that rewarding for a while. But I saw the internet just really, really taking off during that period. And Microsoft was really not part of that.
At this point, having left Microsoft, Brad dipped his toe in the venture capital world. And what he found was that the vision he saw for the internet wasn't his alone. He shared this passion with some old rivals, the guys from Netscape who had been at the core of the lawsuit against Microsoft and Internet Explorer.
So I did make a couple angel investments during that period, and to see how I might like this VC thing. Let me make some investments. So I made an investment in a company called Tellme, which Microsoft ended up buying a number of years later, but it was started by a bunch of ex-Netscape guys. Mike McHugh, Angus Davis, was funded by the CEO, ex-CEO of Netscape, Jim Barksdale. He was a lead investor. And so it was pretty weird. This is 97, 98 to now get involved with a bunch of ex-Netscape guys. And then Hadi Partovi and his brother Ali were also involved. And that's how I got introduced to the company. And it was really, really fun. I mean, I loved getting to know Mike and Angus and the team from Netscape and exchanging war stories from the browser wars of how, you guys did this to us and we did that to you. And what I found was I shared a vision for the future that was more consistent with the vision they had at Netscape than Microsoft did at that time for Microsoft. And so we kind of bonded. We did bond. We stayed up till 2, 3 in the morning many nights just talking about the internet, the future, what it was like inside our companies and what we did and what they did. And so it was like that mutual respect between two warriors who may have been on opposite sides at the time, but really kind of shared a lot. And so I really enjoyed that. And I was on the board of directors for Tellme, and I had a great time. I saw, I could see myself doing this.
Having dipped his toe into the VC world, Brad and some friends started a venture capital firm called Ignition. Based in Seattle, they were initially focused on investments that followed his passion, the internet.
Started Ignition in 2000, primarily with a bunch of ex-Microsoft folks and then one ex-Macaw person, Steve Hooper. It was John Ludwig, Cam Meervold, John Roberts, Rich Tong, Chris Peters, folks that I had worked with throughout my career and who shared a common vision that the next technology wave was going to be the internet. And we wanted to align our VC firm around the internet. In fact, what we believed in 2000s, we felt it was already clear that the internet had won, and what was the next thing after the internet? And we thought it was mobile internet.
I need to stop right here and repeat what Brad just said. He said it was clear, in 2000, some 20 years ago, that the internet had won, and he and Ignition were already moving on to the mobile internet, something most of the rest of the world only truly appreciated 15 years later. The iPhone was still at least 5 years away, and yet Brad and the Ignition team saw that future.
And so that was our fundamental investment thesis when we started Ignition, was to invest around the mobile internet. We were right strategically, but timing-wise, we're a little early. And in VC, you learn pretty quickly being early is the same as being wrong. That you make investments. They may be great ideas, but it just takes too long for the market to develop, and the company runs out of money before then. So a couple of years later, we did revise our investment thesis to a more broader technology investment platform and invest in a company like DocuSign. We were the initial investors in DocuSign, Splunk, and a number of other companies that have done very well.
So one of the things people say about VCs investments all the time is that ideas are a dime a dozen and that money is not particularly that hard to find, but what really you're betting on is the people, is the ability to build a team, to execute, is that still something that rings true to you?
Absolutely, especially early stage, which was what we were doing. We were early stage investors, Series A or seed investors, and there are lots of really great ideas out there. There's some extraordinary ideas out there that there are a lot of great ideas, and ideas. What really matters is how you execute, how you turn that idea into a product and into a company, into a business. And so we do look for not just the idea, but the team around it that can translate that idea into a successful product and business. And the character. Building a startup is hard, is really hard. It's discouraging at times. It's exciting at times. You don't have the staff to just hire people and have somebody else do it. You got to do it all yourself. And typically we'll take a big pay cut to be able to do so based on expectation that hopefully the equity will be worth something someday. But it's a short-term sacrifice. It's a big sacrifice you might have to make in terms of your cash flow at a time when you have kids and family. And so we do look for a character. We look, and we did, to be candid, Chris, especially in the early 2000s, that decade, there were a lot of people at Microsoft who saw startups going crazy, starting all the time in Seattle and the Bay Area, and very exciting time. Great new ideas, companies getting started, and Microsoft was a big company at that time. I would say strategically they were not going in the right direction. That was my opinion. That's why I left the company. I lost faith in the strategic direction of the company, and to be honest, I sold all my stock in the end of '99, which turned out to be until recently a global high. Until the growth of the stock under Satya last year or two turned out to be good timings, covered up a lot of mistakes. People in the company had lost faith in the strategy or the culture. Culture was undergoing some real challenges too, and people were leaving. But we were reluctant at Ignition, unless we really knew the people well enough, to hire people directly from Microsoft into our startups. We wanted them to go through another startup first, because it was a real shock to the system to leave a very coddled, well-paid Microsoft environment and go to a startup where it was bare bones and the salary was a lot less than people were expecting, and you didn't have the headcount. And so we wanted people to go through that experience first to find out whether startup life was really for them.
And one of the things that I kept seeing, and I saw numerous times, was people would say, senior leaders at Microsoft would say, I led $1 billion business. But when you looked at it in any kind of reality, you realized what they did was they led development for a particular business. But they had finance all done for them, sales all done for them, facilities, all the support. They didn't have to manage the most of what is challenging about managing a startup.
Absolutely. It's like you're on a big ship that's, back in the 1600s. People rowing and you're standing at the bow saying, hey, I'm in charge. You don't realize how much infrastructure was there doing all that work for you, that you were really sure you built a great product and that you needed to have a great product, but all that infrastructure, sales, marketing, finance, operations, recruiting, having this constant inflow of people who wanted to work at your company. When you're at, mystartup.com, people at MIT and Stanford don't know who you are. They're not gonna go there. You've got to now be able to convince, you got to be well known enough. You got to be able to create these new networks and flow of candidates. You've got to be able to convince people to come work for you, where that was all done for you at Microsoft. And a lot of people couldn't make that jump. Plus, the way Microsoft was structured, it was pretty functional. And so even if you were a general manager, you really didn't you didn't manage sales. You didn't manage a lot of parts that are important to be able to run a business. And so for that period of time, people would come out of Microsoft really not that well trained to be able to assume a CEO role. They could be good VP of engineering. They could be good CMOs. But in terms of the leadership and exposure to the broad aspect of the business, you didn't get that at Microsoft. I mean, that sales machine at Microsoft was a machine. And even late 90s, early 2000s, a lot of that they were order takers more than they were going out, creating leads, generating business, having to fight it out tooth and nail in the market. It was a different experience. And in a startup, you gotta have scrappy people who are going to operate on a small budget and do very creative things. And your time horizons, there's a time clock. You're in a startup, you run out of money, you're out of business. Microsoft, essentially infinite. There's no time clock. It takes 3 tries to get it right. Sure, no problem. There's no chance they're going to run out of money. But in a startup, there's a time clock, and you run out of money, you're out of business.
So you've been incredibly generous with your time. I just want to wrap up a little bit by we are at obviously an unprecedented time right now. Everything has changed. I mean, the virus has changed an awful lot. Do you think the kinds of change to remote, I mean, you're the visionary here. You're the guy who sees these things. I don't. Do you see this virus and the work from home change and the remote work? Do you think that's going to stick? Do you think that's going to make a big sea change in the way we work?
I do. I think the virus is a huge accelerant to trends that we've been seeing the last couple of years anyways, whether it's the switch from retail to online and switch from shopping at the grocery store to delivery services. I think work from home is going to stick. I think some of these new tools like we're using right now with Zoom, Microsoft Teams, whatever, I think they're going to lead to a whole new generation of tools that make it easier to collaborate. I think there's some challenges. I mean, Microsoft had long been a believer in a headquarters philosophy and not work from home.
They're in the middle of building a $4 billion campus right at this very moment.
And as Satya said, the thing he misses the most is the chatter or the conversations that happen before a meeting and after meeting, where you just kind of talk with people around the table. And there's a lot that gets missed. I think companies are going to have to be a lot more deliberate, a lot more considerate about communication, stuff has to get written out. You can't just walk down the hallway and talk to people. I think they're going to have to be more deliberate about what type of culture and invest more energy into putting, instead of let it just evolve organically and take it for granted, you're going to have to really put effort into creating the culture that you want. I think there are going to be some things that are missed. At the same time, I think people like not having to fight traffic. I think business travel is going to be hugely cut back. I think people are finding you can get a lot, maybe not 100% done over video conferencing, but you probably get 80% of it done, maybe 70% of it done. And you don't have to spend all this time on airplanes and airports and business hotels and spending days for a couple-hour meeting.
This might not be the time to be investing in Class A real estate as well, right? Class A office space.
I think commercial real estate is going to struggle. I think it's going to change our housing industry. I think people who are living in some dinky apartment in San Francisco, 1,000 square feet, paying $5,000 a month. Now that you have to work from home from that space too, you might want a little more space. You might want to be or it's going to give people opportunity to say, I've always wanted to live in the mountains, but I couldn't because my job is there. I think you'll find people moving to what I call AA or AAA cities. Like Boise is going crazy right now. People from California and Washington are buying homes sight unseen. They're looking at the videos on Zillow and saying, I want to move there. I want more space for my family. I want more outdoor activities. I want, good schools. I think you'll see an accelerated trend away from some major, very expensive places to places with lower cost of housing. Maybe, if you're committed to some of the cultural activities like symphony or arts that only New York or San Francisco or Chicago can provide, then, there'll be people who will stay. But I think there'll be a increased migration out of those center cities and into either suburban areas or to next tier cities. Now, am I going to move back to Cleveland? No, I'm not going to move back to Cleveland, although the cost of housing there is really great. I think you'll see shared spaces within, because people still want some human interaction, human connection. They're going to want to get away from the house to have some meetings or phone calls without the distraction of the gardener in the background or the kids running around. People are going to want to get away from the house too. That you go too far in that direction, but
yeah, that's more the office hoteling kind of thing.
Somebody's going to nail that with, as long as it can be a healthy environment in terms of safety and, cleanliness. I think those will thrive. People will want some central meeting, some amenities of an office. Those big office buildings. I mean, look at the Salesforce.com tower. Do you want to be on an elevator right now going to the 80th floor? I don't.
Yeah. One final question, which is not to peek too much under the kimono, but do you see investment opportunities in this change? Are you and your investment company looking at doing some of those things?
Absolutely. Sure.
Okay.
Sure. I mean, you look at some of the best companies have always been formed during a recession. After the 2000-2001 recession, some of the best companies got formed. After 2008 recession, people retrench and look for opportunities where the world is going. And this is going to make some fundamental changes in the way we live our lives, the way we work, the way we play, the way we recreate, the way we educate our families, the way we get food. And I think those are all going to present new opportunities for new businesses. I mean, just look at like telemedicine right now. Even a year ago, was not very well accepted. Now you try to make an appointment, they want to do a video conference. So they say, oh yeah, I guess that can work after all. So I think there will be lots of new opportunities, and whoever nails that right. People are going to look for new forms of social media. They want to create community. Just look at what Zoom has done. in the last year. People want to create community even if they can't be physically together. And something you and I both participate in. Look at Zwift.
Yep.
Indoor cycling or Peloton. It's huge. People can't go to the gym right now, or they want to go outside where the trails may be busy, or there's some health risk. People are moving inside and finding community and being able these new methods of getting exercise or fitness there'll be more of those that take full advantage of this changed world.
Thank you very much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate. I know you don't do this much, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you spending the time with me.
Well, thanks, Chris. I appreciate the opportunity. I really enjoy your podcast. I've been following it since the start. I've learned a lot from it. I know you have a lot of experience, especially for Microsoft. You have a lot of earned experience and lessons that I'm really happy to see you're telling it to the world. I look forward to listening to further episodes, and a book comes out of that. I think that'll be great too. I think you have a lot to teach the world, and I think we here in the latter halves of our career, I think we have a chance to look back and what can we help the next generation learn from what we've learned, and pass some of those tips on and tricks on to help them make new mistakes, but learn from some of the mistakes that we've made and things that we've seen happen that we think can be done better.
I want to thank Brad again for spending the better part of 2 hours with me. He had repeatedly told me that he didn't want to do it, but I'm so glad he did. He is undoubtedly a unique talent, with a gift of vision, as he put it, that placed him at the center of the development of much of the technology we all use every day. I found this conversation to be one of the most thoughtful and enlightening I've had in years. I hope you do as well. The next episode returns to the studio, and I tackle a tough subject that's come to the forefront lately: diversity and inclusion. Some companies make a lot of noise on the subject, but very little progress. I think I know why, and we'll discuss that next time. I hope you'll listen. Leading Smart is from me, Chris Williams. You can find out more about the show and discover other resources for leaders at my website, clwill.com. If you like the show, please share it with your friends and especially on social media. Referrals are the greatest source of new listeners. And send me your thoughts, comments, and suggestions, either on the webpage for this episode or to pod@clwill.com. I'd love to hear from you. That's it for this episode. Next episode, we'll return to the studio for a look at the challenges of diversity and inclusion. It's called Not Just a Job. Until then, please remember that each of the several dozen decisions you make today are part of Leading Smart.